There is a sound the saints stopped uttering when they learned how to pray. It was not forgetfulness, it was fear, because that sound asks for nothing. It gives no thanks. It doesn't negotiate with the divine. It simply gives up. And in that surrender, something that no religion ever promised happens: the end of separation. Eckhart Tolle discovered this one night when he was so saturated with suffering that something inside him died. But it was not the death that poets romanticize. It was the death of the subject who suffers. And when the sufferer disappeared, what remained was not peace. It was the absence of anyone who could be unpeaceful. Can you feel the difference? It is like the silence between two beats of your heart. It was always there, but you were too busy counting the beats. Prayer works like this. You place yourself as someone small speaking to someone large. There is distance. There is hierarchy. There is an implicit request that you be saved from yourself. And perhaps it works. Perhaps prayer soothes. Perhaps it organizes the inner chaos. But it never dissolves the subject that needs to be soothed. The forgotten mantra soothes no one. It kills the speaker. Tolle calls this surrender to the present moment. But these words have become so worn out, so repeated in weekend retreats, that they have lost the razor's edge they carry. Surrender is not peaceful acceptance. Surrender is the collapse of the entire system that was trying to control life. Imagine your mind is a company. Every day the CEO, your ego, wakes up and formulates strategies. How to get more, how to avoid pain, how to be recognized, how not to die alone. Prayer is when the CEO asks an external consultant for help. The forgotten mantra is when the CEO discovers that the company never existed. There is no bankruptcy. There is the realization that there was never anything to go bankrupt. Have you ever noticed that all your problems exist in time? Not in this exact second, but in the projection of this second forward, or in the memory of it backward. Right now, as these words cross your mind, is any problem happening? Not in your story, not next month, now. The desert breathes, inhales emptiness, exhales silence. The medieval Christian mystics had a practice called apophatic contemplation, knowing God by what he is not. They emptied every concept, every image, every word, until they reached absolute nothingness, and there in that theological black hole, something happened. Not an experience, but the end of the one who experiences. St. John of the Cross called it the dark night of the soul, but he was being polite. Because it is not dark, it is surgical. Tolle was not doing apophatic contemplation that night. He was simply exhausted of being himself. Tired of carrying the character Eckhart Tolle, or rather the character he was before he became Eckhart Tolle, and when the exhaustion reached the absolute limit, the character collapsed. And then, for the first time, something looked through his eyes without being him. Have you ever had a moment when you looked at your own hands and they seemed strange, as if you were seeing hands for the first time, without the concept of my hands? In that second, there was pure perception, ownerless, storyless. That is the mantra. It is not a phrase, it is an interval, the silence between heartbeats. All traditional spirituality teaches you to add something. Add prayer, add meditation, add gratitude, add love. And all of this is beautiful, powerful, transformative up to a point, but it is furniture in a collapsing house. You can rearrange the furniture forever, or you can realize that there was never a house. This is terrifying because it means that everything you have built, your spiritual identity, your internal achievements, your years of practice, all of it might be irrelevant. Worse, it might be the obstacle itself. The saints stopped uttering the mantra when they started being considered saints. Because being a saint is an identity, and the mantra dissolves identities. Imagine a musician who practices for decades until mastering the instrument. One day, in the middle of a performance, he forgets that he is playing. There is no longer I playing the piano. There is just music happening. No one doing, just occurring. When he snaps back to remembering that he is playing, the magic breaks. The forgotten mantra is never snapping back to remembering. You are breathing now. But who is breathing? If you pay real, non-conceptual attention, you will realize that the breath happens on its own. It always has. You appropriated it, put a name on it, my breath, but it never needed you to happen. What if the same is true for everything? What if thoughts think themselves? What if emotions arise and pass without a you generating them? What if even this moment of reading is happening without a central reader, just perception unfolding into forms? The desert breathes. No one blows the wind. It blows. Tolle talks about presence, but the word has been domesticated. It became a self-help concept. It became a productivity technique. Be present to be more efficient. That is the opposite of what he points to. Presence is not something you do. It is what remains when you stop doing everything. It is the space in which all doings appear and disappear. It is the blank screen onto which the movie of your life projects. And you were always the screen, but you were so hypnotized by the movie that you forgot. All spiritual seeking is the movie trying to find the screen. But the movie is made of the screen. So the search is a cosmic joke, a joke that can last 1,000 lifetimes, or it can end now. There is a difference between knowing something and realizing something. You know you are going to die, but you haven't realized it. Realizing death would be living completely differently. You know that the now is all that exists, but you haven't realized it. Realizing the now would be the end of all anxiety, because anxiety is always about a time that is not here. The forgotten mantra is not knowledge, it is realization. And realization does not come through accumulation, it comes through subtraction, silence between heartbeats. The saints had glimpses of this, moments when prayer stopped and something greater than prayer took over. But afterward, they tried to turn the glimpse into a method. They tried to teach the way. And all teaching creates distance between the teacher and the taught, between the wise and the ignorant. The mantra cannot be taught because it is not content. It is the absence of content. It is literally nothing, but a conscious nothing. You are afraid of nothing. We all are. That's why we fill every second. Music in the ears, notifications in the pocket, thoughts in the mind, plans for the future, regrets of the past, anything to avoid falling into that silent hole that lies at the center of everything. But Tolle fell and discovered that the hole has no bottom, and that the falling is eternal. And that the falling is ecstasy, because in the infinite fall there is no floor to fear. There is no future impact, there is only falling. Now, always now, and now has no weight, has no gravity, has no problem. All the pain you carry is in time. That shouldn't have happened. Past, that cannot happen. Future, but take time out of the equation. What remains? Pure sensation, without judgment, without story. A sensation without a story is not suffering. It is just energy moving. The desert breathes, and the breath does not complain about the heat. There is a secret practice that Tolle rarely mentions directly because it cannot be practiced. It can only happen. It is what he calls dying before you die. Not metaphorically, literally. You sit, close your eyes, and observe the thought that says, I. Observe where it arises from, and if you can observe with enough attention, without getting involved in the story it tells, you will realize that it arises from nothing, and returns to nothing, and between one arising and the next there is an interval. In that interval you are dead, and completely alive. It is the paradox that language cannot carry, but the experience has no doubt whatsoever. When the Sufi mystics say, die before you die so that you do not die when you die, they are pointing to this. When Ramana Maharshi says, investigate who am I, until the I disappears, he is pointing to this. When Jesus says, whoever loses his life for my sake will find it, he is pointing to this. But we transform everything into poetry, into metaphor, into a safe concept that threatens nothing. The forgotten mantra threatens everything, because everything you call you is a temporal structure, memories and projections. Remove time and you evaporates like fog in the sun. What remains? The sun. Have you ever noticed that you have never seen your own face? You have seen reflections, photos, videos, but never the direct face. And yet you live through this invisible face. You look through eyes you have never seen. In the same way, you have never seen the consciousness that is perceiving this moment, but it is the only thing that has always been here. Unchanging, eternal, effortless. It does not begin when you wake up. It does not end when you sleep. Thoughts come and go in it. Emotions come and go in it. Even the body comes and goes in it. You had a baby body, a teenage body, and they are gone. But something remained witnessing all the changes. that something has no name, has no form, has no agenda, and it is you, not the you that has problems, the you that witnesses the problems. And by witnessing without involvement, the problems lose substance. They become clouds passing in a sky that never moves, silence between heartbeats. Tolle was sitting on a park bench in London, months after his internal collapse, when a woman passed by complaining intensely about life. He perceived that she was completely identified with her narrative of suffering. And then he perceived that he used to be like that. And then he realized that there was no one left inside him to identify with anything. There was only perception, vast, empty, free. The woman continued complaining. But to Tolle, it was like observing clouds forming temporary shapes, without existential weight, without dramatic urgency. He had not become enlightened in the sense of becoming a special being. He had stopped being anyone, and in that stopping, everything became simple. The mantra does not make you special. It dissolves you. And this is liberating in a way that no spiritual achievement can be, because spiritual achievements feed the spiritual ego. I meditated 10,000 hours. I had a samadhi experience. I am more awake than others. That is just ego in new clothes. The mantra gives you nothing. It takes everything away. And when everything has been taken away, what remains is so obvious, so simple, so constantly present, that it is invisible, like the space in a room. Nobody notices the space. Everyone notices the objects. But without the space, there would be no room. You are the space, not the objects. The desert breathes, and there is no one in the desert. There is only the desert breathing. There is a turning point in every genuine spiritual journey. It is when you realize that you are not going anywhere, that there is no destination, that the entire search was movement within the illusion that something was missing. Nothing was ever missing, but the mind needs problems. It is its function. It identifies threats, formulates solutions, plans futures, useful for biological survival, disastrous for existential peace, because the mind creates an I separate from the whole, and that separate I is the root of all suffering, not because it is bad, but because it is fictitious. It is a useful tool that gained self-awareness and thought it was the operator, as if the hammer thought it was building the house. When Tolle points to the now, he is not being simplistic. He is pointing to the only dimension where you truly exist, not as a concept, as a direct fact. You have never experienced the past. You experienced presents that became memories. You will never experience the future. You will experience presents that have not yet happened. There is only now, eternally now. But the now has no duration. It is not an extended second. It is timeless. It is vertical, not horizontal. It is difficult to convey this with language because language is temporal. Subject, verb, object. Everything implies movement in time, but you can feel it, right now. There is a conscious space here where everything appears. Words appear in it. Sensations appear in it. But it does not appear. It already is. It always was. It always will be. Or better, it always is. Silence between heartbeats. The saints knew this. But when they tried to communicate, they created religions. And religions need structure, hierarchy, doctrine. They need to separate the saved from the lost, the enlightened from the ignorant. The mantra saves no one, because there is no one to save. Does this sound nihilistic? Does it sound cold? It is the opposite. It is absolute compassion. Because when you realize that everyone is fighting an illusion that you also fought, there is no judgment. There is recognition. There is tenderness. Like seeing children playing war in the park, they are completely serious, completely involved, and you smile, not because you are superior, but because you see the innocence of the illusion. Tolle sees adults in the same way, fighting imaginary wars, building cardboard empires, and deep down truly suffering because they believe in the play they are enacting. But the stage is real. The stage has always been here, undisturbed, at peace. You are the stage, not the actor. And that perception does not come through effort. Effort is the actor's movement. It comes through rest, deep rest, so deep that even the rester rests. The desert breathes. And every grain of sand is a silent witness to eternity. There is a Zen story about a monk who asks the master, "What is the path?" And the master replies, "You are on it." "But how do I follow?" asks the monk. "Not following is the path. This is not a mystical riddle. It is an accurate description. You are already in consciousness. You always have been. There is no way out of it. So the search for consciousness is absurd. It is like looking for your glasses while you are wearing them. But that search keeps an entire industry running. Books, retreats, methods, all promising to take you where you already are. Tolle does not promise to take you anywhere. He points to where you are, and if you can stop running away for a second, you realize, not intellectually, viscerally, I was always here. And that realization is the end of the search. Not because you found something, but because the seeker was seen as a mirage. Silence between heartbeats. You are afraid of silence because in silence there is no you, there is perception, but there is no person perceiving. There is only the happening, and the ego interprets this as death. And it is right, it is death. But it is the death Christ spoke of. Dying to the world, being born again, not reincarnation, but realizing that you were never born as a separate entity. You were always the whole pretending to be a part, and the part suffers. The part is afraid. The part never has enough. But the whole is complete. The whole needs nothing. The whole is everything. Isn't it beautiful when said like that? It becomes a self-help affirmation. You are complete. You are the universe. Empty words that the mind memorizes without transforming anything. The realization does not come through the repetition of phrases. It comes through the collapse of structures. Imagine your life is a movie. You are so involved in the plot that you forgot you are in a movie theater. Forgot there is a screen. Forgot there is a projector. Forgot there is light passing through the film, making everything visible. The mantra is when you look back and see the projector light and realize that you are the light. You always were the light. The film never touched you, never hurt you, never completed you. It was just forms dancing in your own luminosity. The desert breathes, and the breath does not seek meaning. It simply is. Tolle spent years after his transformation walking in parks, sitting on benches, observing life without a personal narrative. People thought he was a beggar, and perhaps he was. A beggar of identity, free from the prison of personality. He had no purpose, no mission, no future, but he had everything, because he had the now, and the now contains everything. Only later, when language returned in a different form, no longer contaminated by I, did he begin to teach, or rather the teaching began to flow through him, ownerless, like music flows through the musician who forgot he is playing. Silence between heartbeats. Do you want to practice? Do you want something to do? Here it is. Perceive the space between thoughts. Do not try to create space. Just perceive that it already exists. Between every two thoughts there is an interval. Tiny, but it is there. In that interval, you are dead and alive simultaneously. Dead as a person. Alive as consciousness. And if you can rest in that interval for an instant, just one real instant, everything changes. Not because you gained something, but because you saw that there was never a problem. The problem was always the subject who had problems, and the subject was never real. It was always a wave thinking it was separate from the ocean, fighting against other waves, afraid of turning into foam. But the wave was always the ocean, always will be the ocean, was never separate. The desert breathes. And who is there to tell this story? No one. Just the desert breathing in the form of words. Tolle says this is the end of suffering, but that is not quite it. The body can still feel pain, the mind can still be sad, but there is no longer a central I carrying that as an identity. It is like the weather. It rains, but the sky does not suffer the rain. The rain passes through the sky without leaving a mark. You are the sky, not the rain. All experiences, good, bad, neutrals, are rain, temporary, superficial, but there is something in you that never gets wet, that is never touched, that simply witnesses everything with natural equanimity, not forced equanimity, not stoic control, but the natural peace of what simply is. Like the space in a room does not fight the objects, it allows everything, contains everything, and is unaffected by anything. Silence between heartbeats. There is a scene where Tolle is giving a talk and someone asks, "How can I stop thinking?" And he answers, "Who wants to stop?" The question destroys the question, because the one who wants to stop thinking is a thought. It is the ego wanting to get rid of the ego. It is the mind trying to overcome the mind. impossible. But when you see this, really see it, not just understand it, there is an inner laugh, not of scorn, of relief. Ah, there never was a problem. I was fighting my own shadow. And in that laugh, something relaxes, deeply, permanently. Not because you solved something, but because you stopped creating the problem. The desert breathes, and no one is there to say, "This is my desert." So the desert is free, completely free. You too, you always were. That is the cosmic joke. You searched for freedom for lifetimes, and you were always free. The search was the only prison, but the search can only be seen as an illusion from outside the search, and there is no method to get out, because every method maintains the illusion that there is someone doing the method. So what remains? Just this moment, exactly as it is, without narrative, without subject, without object, just the happening, the pure happening. And in the middle of the happening there is you, not as an entity, as conscious space in which everything happens, empty and full simultaneously, silence between heartbeats. The mantra the saints forgot is not a sound. It is the silence before all sound. It is the space before all form. It is the consciousness before all content. And you never needed to utter it, because you are it. The desert breathes, and there is no breath without the desert. There is no desert without the breath. They were never two, just as you and life were never two. The dream of separation ends, not with a dramatic awakening, but with the simple recognition that there was never any sleep, just eyes open the whole time. Seeing a movie called Me, and now the movie continues, but you know it is a movie, and that changes everything without changing anything. The forms continue, the thoughts continue, the sensations continue, but there is peace, not as a feeling, as a fact, as a foundation, as essential nature. And in that peace there is no saint, there is no sinner, there is no enlightened one, there is no ignorant one, there is only life, living itself, through infinite forms, and you are all of them. And none of them, silence between heartbeats eternally,